So in this game in the Champions League, it was no surprise that Milan had to get a win in this game versus Club Brugge. After losing to Liverpool and losing to Bayer Leverkusen, it was important to get at least 3 points in this edition of the Champions League. And the starting lineup is exactly what you thought it was going to be. We saw Tomori and Gabbia return in that center back partnership in the defense. We saw Theo Hernandez and Rafael Leão come back into the lineup after Theo being suspended. For this Champions League game, obviously he's available, and Leao comes back in that left wing spot. And very early on, we were actually under a lot of pressure from Club Brugge, but we did well to deal with the pressure with some great saves from Mike Maignan to keep it level. And who other to open the scoring than Christian Pulisic with an Olympico goal. Whether he meant it or not, it was still spectacular to see, bringing his tally to 10 goals and assists in 11 games in all competitions, which is sensational for Christian Pulisic. This might be a crazy shout, but I did say that Maignan or Gabbia should be the captain, but honestly, with all the praise that Fonseca has been saying recently about Christian Pulisic, about tracking back and doing the most for the team, I don't think it'd be crazy for Christian Pulisic to have the captain's armband, with him being our best player at the moment, while also being a great example of being the player that Fonseca wants. And shortly after, Milan would be rewarded with another red card in back-to-back games, this time for a 50-50 tackle with Tijani Reinders and Onyedika. In the event of that, he did stamp on Reinders' foot, and Club Brugge would go down to 10 men. And with us being up 1-0 with an extra man advantage, we were hoping that Milan would come out into the first half more aggressive than the first. And it felt like we were very passive and not really taking the most of our chances despite us having the lead. And I feel like we just weren't playing up to the occasion. And in the start of the second half, we saw much of what we did in the first because of our poor defensive positioning. This 10-man Club Brugge would take the lead and take advantage of an open space into the back post, pass it in, and score the equalizer for 1-1. And I hate to say it, but this defense looks so much more erratic when Fikayo Tomori is in the team playing. And the goal that we conceded, you can see quite literally almost all our defenders just ball watching, not really know what's going on behind them. No one's checking their shoulders. I think a lot of blood is on Theo Hernandez's hands as well, because that was his side to cover. And I think also we're still trying to figure out who our best center back pairing is. And I think for now it is probably that Gabbia and Tomori partnership, but to be honest, I wouldn't mind to see a Gabbia and Pavlovic, because we only saw that, I think, one time, and that was against either, I think, Lecce or Venezia, one of those two games. But I wouldn't mind seeing them be a partnership once again. And we struggled to get anything going after that goal was conceded. And once the subs of Okafor and Chukwueze came in, it was an instant impact. And Okafor, from that left-hand side, plays a great ball into Tijani Reinders and hit a side-footed finish for us to gain the lead. And a huge talking point in this game was that Leao got subbed out, and once we scored, he didn't really celebrate with the team a whole lot, but people are saying that we scored because Leao came out, which I don't think is true whatsoever. And let's not pretend like Leao didn't have a good game. He was beating his defenders, he was making space for his teammates, he had the most duels won out of anybody on the pitch on that day. And to be honest, I think it was just a lack of the final product from most notably Loftus Cheek. I feel like he got a lot of chances to kind of make the exact same run that Reinders was making, but I think because he was occupying that position, I feel like he kind of took away from what Reinders can do. And I mean, Reinders got 2 goals tonight. I really liked what Fabio Capello said about the whole situation, and he said, and I quote, "I believe we shouldn't talk about Leao as a leader. He's a player which doesn't fit the mold," which I 100% agree with. As I said in a previous video, he needs to change his attitude, and to do that, he needs the support of his teammates, which I think also goes for the fans as well. And if we constantly have this expectation of Leao and constantly criticize every single little thing he does, it's only going to cause friction within the club and the management and also the fan base. And I've been a supporter of Leao this whole season, and he played a great game in this match, creating chances, dribbling past his man, but he would always kind of look for the pass, which I think he maybe should have been a little bit selfish. When you do the same thing too many times, you start to become a little bit more predictable, which I think is why he made the sub Fonseca. And after that second goal to gain the lead, this team looked a lot more proactive going forward and being dangerous up front. And with now Pulisic moving into that attacking mid position, replacing Loftus Cheek, who was completely absent, it really brought the best in a lot of the players. And like how I was saying, how Loftus-Cheek occupied that attacking mid space, when Pulisic was in there, he would drag players forward to open up the space for Reinders to run into, and he eventually got a second goal from that. But I wanted to talk about Loftus-Cheek for a little bit, because Loftus-Cheek for me is no longer an option in this Fonseca team, and Fonseca himself insists that this role is for Loftus-Cheek, but it's just not. And you saw how much better we played with a player like the characteristics of Pulisic to play in that role. And it also brings out the best in another sub that came in, which was Samuel Chukwueze. And last game, he got a goal versus Udinese, which he played great in. And in this match, he got a brilliant assist, beating his man with some great pace and dribbling. He laid it off nicely to TG Reinders, and he got the third and the final one of the game. And Chukwueze in these last couple games has been great. And like I said in a previous video, all these people wanted to sell Chukwueze because he wasn't getting chances to grow and he wasn't being productive. But now you see he's going through such a great patch of form right now. The best thing that we could do right now is capitalize on it. And I think the best thing right now for Chukwueze's game is to start him. And that doesn't mean bench Pulisic. I'm saying move Pulisic into that attacking mid role. Give him that freedom to kind of move and create space for the rest of his teammates. And I think with Pulisic in the middle, it'll bring a lot out of Chukwueze's ability to do what he did versus Club Brugge, beat his man with great pace and dribbling. Because Chukwueze was just such a joy to watch in that game. And I really hope Fonseca does try it. And the moment that we all loved seeing in this game was the young Francesco Camarda to come in for his Milan Champions League debut. And we actually got some pretty good minutes for Camarda to come in, 15 minutes of game time. And I just love seeing him play because we all know that this kid is the future of the team. So to see him play at this age, at 16, is always a treat. And the dream scenario did happen in a great cross from TG Reinders, and Camarda with a world-class header scores to become the youngest ever goal scorer in the Champions League until it was called for offside. And before the goal was called offside, the emotions that I had were crazy because I was thinking about how happy I was for Camarda, for a fan of the club and stuff like that. And I made an analogy a long time ago, back when Cutrone was still playing for us. And Camarda kind of gives that same energy of Cutrone, boyhood fan of the club, and how, all of us were always so happy when Cutrone scored because he was uno di noi, he was one of us. So having someone like Camarda, be a fan from the banter era and, be a fan through all those, tough moments of being a Milan fan, and seeing him now play in the Champions League at this young age is so just touching to see. But also, I was like kind of seeing into the future a little bit, seeing Camarda score this goal for us. Like it just kind of like tapped something in my brain. It's like, this is like what we're going to see, right? Maybe, this is the guy that we've been calling for all these years, a striker of Camarda's ability and to be a potential future captain, a future leader in this team. And the game ended after that, and it was kind of a strange game, to be honest, because Club Brugge at times were attacking us in waves of being very threatening at times. But I think Milan did do well to kind of stay tight and compact. But once we did lose concentration, that's when the opposition scored, which I think we need to improve drastically on, because that's been a main talking point this season. But I do think that Fonseca made the right changes, and we saw a big difference once Loftus-Cheek came out, Pulisic tucked into that attacking mid role, and we looked a lot more fluid and a lot more comfortable. And we did so, and we scored 2 goals after that. So I just want to tip my hat to Coach Fonseca for that one. And of course, this was a must-win game for us. And I think we did all the right things to kind of ensure that by dealing with in-game situations properly. We did have to call upon Mike Maignan for a couple big saves, but with now a win finally under our belt in the Champions League, I think we can be a lot more comfortable going into these next couple games. And especially now we need to prepare well for Real Madrid after seeing them absolutely dismantle Borussia Dortmund. So let's move on to tops and flops of this game. So top for me, I'm going to say Reinders. I feel like he was super influential in this game, and I feel like just was pulling strings, and I feel like he just had his fingerprints all over it, and got 2 goals for it as well, kind of, moving into that space and kind of, doing well to kind of read those kind of situations to move into that space as well. So I just want to tip my hat to Reinders, and you are the man of the match for me. And let's go to flop of the match. Flop of the match, hands down, Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I touched upon it earlier in the video, but for me, I just feel like he has no place in this team anymore. And we saw, Loftus-Cheek last year, he got, that 10, kind of goal ratio, but I just don't see him fitting in this team. I mean, we always, kind of see Loftus-Cheek and kind of always talk about that game versus PSG. That was the Loftus-Cheek we all know and love. But for me, I just feel like this team and this system that Fonseca has doesn't play to those traits of Loftus-Cheek. I wouldn't mind him coming off the bench. I don't care about that. But as a starter, I just don't think he has that privilege to be a starter in the starting 11. So for me, Loftus-Cheek is going to be my flop. Now let's quickly preview our next game in the Serie A, which is against Bologna. And the main kind of talking point in this game is that it might actually be postponed. And that would mean bad news for us, because that would mean that Teo and TG Reinders are out for that game versus Napoli, which is huge for us to really gain points on the top of the table. But I'm really hoping this game doesn't get postponed, because that would be a huge hit for us to go into that game without them. So if this game does go on, then I think that Milan would win, because Bologna has just really not really been the Bologna that they were last season. Obviously losing the likes of Motta, Calafiori, and Xerxes. Obviously it's a huge hit, but I think going forward, I think Milan would have a comfortable 2-0 win. I don't really see Bologna kind of troubling us that much, just because they really haven't been that great this season. So I do think that this game will be a win for us, and I think that will stretch our run of games to 4 wins in a row. I think that'll do it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Get involved in the comment section below. I want to know what you guys have to say about the whole Loftus-Cheek situation, what you guys think about that Leao situation especially. And I think there's a lot of, kind of question marks and a lot of thoughts and opinions going into that whole Leao situation. So I want to know what you guys have to say about that. And what do you guys think about the game in the Champions League? So guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Ciao ragazzi.